Everyone. Today I just thought I would have a little bit of a chat with you about sleep. For some people, sleep happens really, really easily, and for other people, falling asleep or staying asleep is really hard. So I thought today I would give you a few tips around how to increase the quality of your sleep and how to fall asleep more easily, and also a little bit of information around the kind of science of sleep and what's happening in your body and your brain when you're sleeping or not sleeping. So first of all, getting into a good body rhythm is really, really helpful. So thinking about what time you're going to bed, what time you're falling asleep, what time you're getting up, it's keeping active during the day and trying to be restful at night. So creating a really good rhythm throughout your day that's going to encourage sleep at the end of your day. The other thing that is helpful probably to talk about is melatonin. Now, melatonin is the chemical in your body that helps you to fall asleep. So melatonin is created naturally in our body, and it builds up throughout the day. And when we get enough of it, we fall off to sleep. And then when we're sleeping, it drops off again. And then in the morning, it's really low. So we wake up and then it builds up throughout the day. So what happens with our melatonin levels? Look at our trusty whiteboard out. So below this line, we are awake. Above this line, we're asleep. So our melatonin levels have to hit this line before we experience sleep onset, before we fall asleep. So we wake up. Let's go on this side. All right. We wake up in the morning and our melatonin levels start pretty low. And then we do things, builds up. Then eventually, we fall asleep and then drop back down and down we go. So that's kind of our best scenario of our day. Builds up throughout the day, like this. We fall asleep and then drops back down and we can start our day again the next day. What happens sometimes is that, and we'll talk a little bit about what this is, but there's a whole lot of things that drop our melatonin when we don't necessarily want them to. So we might start our day and not get enough sunlight. So instead of going up like that, we might just go kind of across. We don't kind of get as high. And then you get a dark colour. Colours very helpful. Here we go. All right, so go up a bit, and then we might have a lot of caffeinated drinks or sugar, so we kind of struggle to fall asleep. We get a bit more energy, so we drop back down. Then we might go up, and then we might have a lot of stress or worries, so then it's hard to fall asleep. And then we get really close at bedtime, and then we're watching a whole bunch of screens which emit blue light, which drops our melatonin. So phones, iPads, big TVs, laptops, and then so the dip gets finally up. But instead of falling asleep at, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock when we were meant to, now suddenly it's hours later and we're not falling asleep till then because we had so many more dips in our melatonin that we didn't build enough for us to drop off to sleep until later on in the night. So let's have a little bit of a think about the things that drop our melatonin levels. So things that help in the morning. So let's go through our day and talk about what's helpful and what's unhelpful. So in the morning, one of the biggest things that drops our melatonin is sunlight. And it's kind of that blue light from the sun. And so something that is similar to that is like on screens. So on some devices, you can get a blue light filter. So that's really helpful to keep your blue light filter on so that you're more in control of what light is going into your body. But waking up in the morning and opening your curtains, opening your blinds, getting some light in your house, going outside for a walk, eating breakfast by the window, all of those things will help to drop your melatonin down again so that it can slowly build up throughout the day. Wakes you up, makes you feel fresh, lots of benefits to light. The other thing that is really helpful is exercise. If you're not sleeping well, is getting lots of exercise during the day, even if it's just going for a 10-minute walk in the morning or the afternoon, or playing a sport or riding a bike or your scooter or going for a run, going for a swim, you know, doing some skipping in your lounge room, whatever's kind of helpful and kind of makes sense for your body. Doing exercise throughout the day will help us to feel more restful at night. Avoiding things like caffeine, sugar, all of those stimulants that make our brain move faster and go faster will also stop us from drifting off to sleep. The thing around sleep is that if what you're doing at the moment is working for you, great, you don't have to change anything. But if you're having trouble sleeping, then implementing some of these strategies can be really, really helpful and give you a bit more of a control around your sleep and sleep techniques that you're using. Obviously, we've talked about light. So if you're struggling to sleep, the recommendation is 1 to 2 hours before you're intending to go to sleep, stay off all screens. So TVs, laptops, phones, iPads, tablets, all of those things. Avoiding that between 1 and 2 hours before you're intending to go to sleep can be really, really helpful. Because again, it allows that melatonin to build up enough. You know, some people can watch a movie, turn it off, go to sleep. If that's you, that's fantastic. You don't need to change anything. But if you're having trouble falling off to sleep with that sleep onset, then looking at tweaking some things, and one of those things that is recommended is reducing that screen time before bed. So playing board games instead, or reading, or colouring, doing some art, you know, whatever takes your fancy. So sometimes when we go to bed, we use that time to worry about everything. So when we're worried, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling stressed, it's really hard to drop off to sleep. So by setting aside some time during the day to do some journaling, to talk to a friend or a support person, to do some meditation or mindfulness, and kind of think about your worries, plan around them, work through them, start to process them at a time during the day, not at bedtime. That allows you to kind of work through that stress and that anxiety and then process that energy and those emotions before you're laying in bed. Otherwise, it's a lot to carry. The other recommendation is only being in bed for sleep. So if you're struggling to fall asleep, then don't spend all day watching movies in bed or reading in bed. Try and get up, move outside of that room. Especially say with remote learning, if you're struggling to sleep but you're sitting in your bed to do study all day and then you're not really moving much or getting much fresh air or moving away from that sleep space, it can be really difficult. So looking at, you know, setting up a desk or something, even if it's inside your bedroom but away from your bed, can be really helpful. Thinking about, you know, the majority of the reasons why we can't sleep comes from inside our body and inside our mind. So they're why we're talking about exercise and caffeine and light and worries and things like that, because it's about what's happening in our body. But we also need to think about what's going on outside of us that might be impacting our sleep. So it might be it's really noisy, or we're freezing, or we're really hot, or we're uncomfortable, or there's dog sleeps on our bed, or the cat sleeps on our bed and wakes us up all the time. We might be feeling unsafe in the space that we're in. Our phone might be going off, so you might want to put your phone on airplane mode or silent, or turn the Wi-Fi and the data off so you can only get calls if it's emergency rather than social media updates and things like that. Looking at, you know, I think the other thing that's important to think about is stress is not helpful for falling asleep. And sometimes because we're struggling with falling asleep, we get stressed about that. So we kind of take on these internal kind of negative self-talk of, I am a bad sleeper, I have insomnia, I don't fall asleep well, sleep's really hard for me, I'm not very good at it, I never fall asleep, nights are really stressful. So when we start kind of feeding into that internal negative dialogue, it's really difficult to shift, and that increases our stress level, which makes it really hard for us to drop off to sleep. So by changing that around, every night is new. We're just taking it as it comes. We're trying different things. You are not a bad sleeper. Just last night was hard to fall asleep. Sometimes it's hard to fall asleep. Or this is something you're struggling at the moment, but you're working through it. It's going to be okay. So the other thing that's helpful with that is sometimes turning your clock around or not looking at the time. So going to bed and not watching the clock, because that can remind us, I'm still not asleep. Which makes us feel kind of bad about our progress and how we're going and that we're not sleeping. And it adds to that stress, it adds to that worry, it adds to that kind of negative self-talk and dialogue. And so shifting away from that is really, really important, because sometimes we're not sleeping well and we're so stressed that we're not sleeping well that we don't sleep well even worse. So it kind of feeds into itself around that negative sleep pattern. So think about things that are good for your melatonin, helpful for dropping it in the morning, building it up, and supporting it throughout the evening. Looking at worries throughout the day rather than at night, doing exercise, avoiding caffeine, sugar, thinking about where you're getting your light from, and being thoughtful around the times of the day or night that you're experiencing that, looking at external things that might be impacting on your sleep and our kind of meta emotions around sleep, so how we feel about sleeping, can all be really helpful. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully there's a few little tips and tricks that you can try that's going to help you with your sleep onset, so falling asleep, and your sleep maintenance, which is staying asleep. Sweet dreams, everybody. See ya.